The envelope hit the lawyer's desk like a quiet bomb. Elena Whitmore did not flinch. She sat perfectly still in her black designer dress, spine straight, hands folded in her lap, watching the lawyer's mouth move without really hearing him. Around her, cousins and distant relatives who had not visited Arthur in 3 years were now dabbing invisible tears with expensive handkerchiefs. Victor, her cousin, sat 2 seats away with the expression of a man who had already spent his share of the inheritance 3 times over in his head. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the clause again, louder this time, because apparently nobody had heard it correctly the first time. Miss Elena Whitmore will receive full operational control of Whitmore Industries only upon completion of the following condition. She must locate and legally marry a man by the name of Daniel Hayes within 60 days of this reading. The room erupted. Victor laughed first, a short, mean, disbelieving laugh. He lost his mind at the end, Victor said, not even lowering his voice. I always said it, the old man lost it. Other relatives exchanged glances, some were whispering. One of the aunts made a sound that was half gasp and half cough. Elena did not move, she stared at the lawyer. Read it again. The lawyer read it again. Then the lawyer slid a sealed envelope across the table. Ivory paper, Arthur's handwriting on the front, her name in his careful, deliberate script. Elena took it without looking at anyone. She broke the seal, she read. Elena, Daniel Hayes does not need your money, he needs a wife, and you, my dear, need a family. That was all. She read it 4 times, the words did not change. Elena set the letter face down on the table. She looked at the lawyer and asked, very calmly, who Daniel Hayes was and where to find him. The lawyer said he had been given an address. He would provide it privately per Arthur's instruction. Victor leaned forward. You're not seriously considering this. When have I ever done anything that wasn't serious? Elena said. She stood, collected her bag, and walked out before Victor could respond. She did not cry until she was in the back of her car, alone, the partition raised, the city moving past the tinted windows in silence. She had not cried at the funeral, she cried now. By the next morning she had the address. The GPS took her 40 minutes outside the city, through roads that got narrower and quieter with every turn, into a town that smelled like pine trees and engine oil. The mechanic workshop sat at the edge of a long street, hand-painted sign, 2 fuel pumps, a row of cars in various stages of repair. 3 workers in dark blue uniforms looked up when her black car pulled in. Elena stepped out. The looks she received were not unkind, they were simply honest. Nobody here dressed the way she dressed. Nobody here moved the way she moved. She felt it immediately, that particular discomfort of being somewhere you do not belong, and she straightened her spine against it. I'm looking for Daniel Hayes, she said. One of the workers tilted his head toward the far end of the workshop, under the blue Honda. Elena walked across the concrete floor in heels, stepping carefully over a water hose. She could see a pair of legs extending from beneath a raised car. Mr. Hayes. The legs did not move. Mr. Hayes, my name is Elena Whitmore, I need to speak with you. There was a clang of metal on metal, then silence, then the slow roll of a mechanic's board across the floor. Daniel Hayes emerged. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark grease on his forearms, and a patience in his eyes that looked like it had been earned the hard way. He looked at her the way a man looks at something that doesn't quite fit the picture he's standing in. Whitmore, he said slowly, like the company. Yes, my uncle was Arthur Whitmore. Something moved across Daniel's face for just a moment, something private and careful, and then it was gone. He wiped his hands on a cloth and stood. What does a Whitmore want with a mechanic? Elena had practiced this. She had rehearsed the words in the car. Even so, hearing herself say them out loud in this place in front of this man made them sound stranger than she had expected. My uncle said you needed a wife. Dead silence. Every worker in the shop had suddenly found a reason to stop what they were doing. Daniel looked at her for a long, flat moment. Say that again. His will, it contains an instruction. In order to inherit control of his company, I must marry you within 60 days. She opened her bag. I have a proposal. It would be a legal arrangement only. I would offer financial compensation, relocation to a better neighborhood, and full tuition coverage at any private school for your daughter. In exchange, I need a husband on paper for 1 year. She waited. She had prepared for negotiation. She had prepared for questions about the money. She had even prepared for outrage. She had not prepared for what actually happened. Daniel set down the cloth. He looked at her like she had said something deeply offensive without realizing it. "Let me understand you," he said. "You came here to buy yourself a husband, and as part of the package you'll buy my daughter a better school." "I wouldn't characterize it that way." "That's exactly what you said." His voice was quiet. That was the thing Elena had not expected. He wasn't shouting, he was calm in a way that felt more serious than shouting. "I don't need a wife, my daughter needs a mother, and I will never sell her heart for your inheritance." Elena opened her mouth, closed it. She had never in 32 years had a person refuse money, not like that, not the way you refuse something that offends you at the core. She drove back to the city in a silence so thick it'd wait. She told herself it didn't matter, she would find another solution, she would contest the will, she would find a legal workaround, she would call her lawyers. But his words sat in her chest like a splinter, small and unreachable. "I will never sell her heart." 3 days later she went back, not to the workshop this time. She had asked the lawyer to find out more about Daniel Hayes. What she learned had kept her awake. His wife had left when Lily was 2 years old. Not a divorce, not a negotiation. She had simply gone. Daniel had been working double shifts at the shop while caring for an infant, then a toddler, then a child who drew pictures of families at school and always gave the mother figure enormous hair because she'd never actually seen her own mother long enough to remember what she looked like. Elena found herself on the edge of a small park that Thursday evening, sitting in her car, watching Daniel and Lily at a food stand on the corner. Lily was eating something with sauce on it, and Daniel was losing the battle of trying to clean her face while she laughed and wiggled away. He gave up eventually and laughed too. And Lily held his hand with both of hers. Elena had grown up in houses with 6 bedrooms and catered dinners and people who looked at her from across long tables and called it love. She had never once seen love that looked like what she was looking at now. Lily noticed her first. Children always do. She pointed at the car and said something to Daniel. He looked over and his expression shifted immediately, that wall going back up, but Lily had already waved. Elena waved back awkwardly, like someone who had forgotten how. By the time she had found a parking spot and walked over, Lily was watching her with open curiosity. "Are you the rich lady who wants to marry my daddy?" Daniel choked on his food. "Lily, I heard you talking on the phone," Lily said simply. She turned back to Elena. "You look lonely." Elena did not know what to do with that. She was a woman who had given speeches in boardrooms full of hostile men. She had bought companies, fired executives, and negotiated contracts in 3 languages. And a 7-year-old had just taken her apart in 4 words. She went back to the lawyer the next morning and demanded the full story. Why Daniel? Why this man specifically? The lawyer poured water for both of them before speaking. 9 years ago, Arthur Whitmore's car had gone off a road during a rainstorm. It was late. The road was isolated. Several cars slowed, saw the wreck, and kept going. Daniel had been driving home from a night shift. He had stopped. He had pulled Arthur free from the car, called the ambulance, and stayed with him on the wet road in the dark, holding his hand and talking to him until the paramedics arrived. Arthur had broken 2 ribs and his collarbone. When Arthur tried to find Daniel weeks later to offer a financial reward, Daniel had already moved. It took months for Arthur's people to locate him. When they did, Daniel had listened to Arthur's offer and politely declined. "He said one thing," the lawyer told Elena. "He said, do something good for someone else one day." Elena sat very still. "Your uncle never forgot him," the lawyer continued. "He told me once that in 50 years of business, Daniel Hayes was the only person who ever helped him without wanting anything back. He believed that kind of character was rare. He believed you needed to see it." "He could have just told me about him," Elena said. The lawyer almost smiled. "You wouldn't have believed it, you needed to experience it." Elena spent 3 days not sleeping well. Victor had begun circulating rumors through the board that she was emotionally unfit to run the company, that Arthur's final months had seen him manipulated by bad advisors, that the will itself should be challenged. The board was starting to listen. She had less time than she had thought. On the 4th day, she drove back to Daniel's neighborhood. No bodyguards this time. She wore a simple dark coat and flat shoes. She stopped at a grocery store and bought things she thought a family might need because it felt wrong to arrive empty-handed and she didn't know what else to do. Daniel opened his door and stared at the grocery bags. "What is this?" "I don't know how to do this," Elena said honestly. I don't know how to ask for help without making it sound like a transaction, but I'm trying. He let her in, barely. She told him about Victor, about the board, about the timeline. She told him that if Victor succeeded, he would dismantle the charitable foundations Arthur had built over 40 years, that employees who had worked for the company for decades would lose their pensions, that everything her uncle had spent his life building would be handed to someone who had spent 30 years waiting for him to die. Daniel listened. He said nothing for a long time. Then Lily came running in from the hallway and crashed directly into the grocery bags, sending 3 cans rolling across the floor. Elena bent down to catch them. Lily immediately crouched beside her and picked one up. "Do you know how to braid hair?" Lily asked, holding the can out to Elena. "No," Elena said. Lily nodded thoughtfully. "That's okay, Daddy doesn't either, he just tries." Something about that broke something loose in Elena's chest. She looked up at Daniel. He was watching his daughter with a look that was equal parts love and terror, the look of a man who had given everything he had to one small person and was now watching that small person lower the drawbridge for a stranger. He told Elena then, quietly, while Lily was arranging the cans on the counter, that his daughter had already lost one mother, that Lily did not talk about it, that she drew pictures of families at school and always gave her mother figure a lot of hair because she had never really known her own mother, that she was 7 years old and already understood that some people left, and that understanding sat in her like a quiet bruise. "If you come into her life," Daniel said, "and then leave, I will not forgive you. I don't care about the reason." "I know," Elena said. "I don't think you do." "Then let me try to learn." He looked at her for a long time, then he said, "Stay for dinner." It was the most awkward dinner of Elena's life. She burned the onions trying to help. The smoke alarm briefly went off. Lily thought this was the funniest thing that had ever happened. Daniel opened a window and didn't say a word about it, which Elena somehow found more dignified than if he'd laughed. They ate together at a small table with mismatched chairs, and Elena could not remember the last time food had tasted like anything. She agreed to the arrangement 3 days later, but Daniel's conditions were not about money: no moving to her mansion, no changing his schedule, no using Lily's face for any media coverage, no making his daughter into a prop for a press story. If any of those things changed, he would end it without notice. Elena agreed to every condition. The wedding was quiet, City Hall, a small ceremony. Lily wore a yellow dress she had picked herself and held both of their hands walking out. The media found out within 48 hours. The headline that Victor's team pushed was devastating in its simplicity: "Billionaire heiress buys poor single father to secure fortune." It ran everywhere: gossip sites, financial news, morning talk shows. Someone had found the general outline of the arrangement, not the full contract, not the details, but enough. Elena's phone did not stop. She handled it with the cold efficiency she had always used in crises: statements drafted, lawyers briefed, board communicated to. But she was not at her office when Lily came home from school that afternoon. She was at Daniel's house. She had been there all day, working from the kitchen table, because something in her had stopped being able to be away from that small, ordinary home. Lily walked in quietly, no running, no crashing into anything. Daniel was right behind her. He looked at Elena with an expression she had never seen on him before, something between grief and controlled fury. "What happened?" Elena asked. Lily sat down at the table. She was holding her lunch box very tightly with both hands. "Some kids said you're not my real mother," she said. "They said you're pretend. They said you only came because of money." Elena felt the sentence like a physical thing, something with weight and edges. "Lily, is it true?" Lily asked. Her voice was very small. Elena looked at the child who had waved at her car from across a street, the child who had said she looked lonely, the child who gave her drawing of a mother enormous hair because she didn't know what a mother looked like. Elena opened her mouth and could not speak. Daniel stepped forward. "Lily, go wash up, I'll be there in a minute." He waited until Lily's footsteps had gone down the hall, then he turned to Elena. "I told you," he said. His voice was quiet the same way it had been quiet in the workshop, more dangerous for it. "I told you exactly what I needed and exactly what I wouldn't accept." "I didn't leak anything, Daniel." "It doesn't matter who leaked it. My daughter is sitting in her room right now wondering if she imagined the last 3 weeks. That's what matters." He shook his head. "I warned you." Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, he walked to the hallway. I'm protecting my daughter, that's all I've ever done. He began packing a bag for Lily, quietly, methodically. Elena stood in the kitchen and watched, and the silence was the loudest thing she had ever heard. He paused at the door, Lily's hand in his. Lily was looking at the floor. You wanted a husband for your inheritance, Daniel said. I wanted peace for my daughter, we both made a mistake. The door closed. Elena stood in Daniel's kitchen for a long time after they left. The mismatched chairs, the drawings Lily had stuck to the refrigerator with small magnets shaped like animals. The window Daniel had opened the night the smoke alarm went off, which he had never quite closed all the way since. She sat down at the kitchen table. She had a board meeting in 14 hours. Victor would be there. Victor, who had spent 30 years being the kind of person who passed burning cars on dark roads. Victor, who had learned early that loyalty was a commodity and had priced everything accordingly. Victor was about to take everything Arthur had spent his life building, and Elena was sitting in an empty kitchen because the only honest people she had ever met had walked out the door. She pulled out her phone, she looked at the board meeting notification. Then she put the phone face down on the table and sat in the quiet for a long time. She thought about Arthur, about what he had known. He had not known Daniel's address by accident, he had tracked him carefully over years, had watched from a distance the way Elena had watched Daniel and Lily at the food stand, had understood something that Elena was only now beginning to understand, that some people spend their whole lives surrounded by abundance and never once feel held. She thought about Lily's face when she came through the door carrying her lunch box like a shield. By morning she had made a decision. She walked into the boardroom at 9 o'clock in the dark green dress Arthur had told her once made her look like she meant business. The room was full. Board members, lawyers, family representatives. Victor was already seated, already smiling, which was how Elena knew he believed he had won. She let him present his case. She let him lay out the leaked contract, the timeline, the arrangement. She let him make his argument that she had entered a fraudulent marriage purely for financial gain, that she had manipulated a vulnerable single father, that the board should consider seriously whether this was the character they wanted leading the company. Then she stood. Everything my cousin just said about how this marriage began is true, she said. The room shifted. It began because of a will. It began because I was afraid of losing something my uncle built, and I made a practical decision the way I have always made practical decisions. She looked across the room. What my cousin did not say is what happened after. She told them about Lily. She told them about the smoke alarm and the mismatched chairs. She told them about a little girl who gave her mother in drawings enormous hair because she had never met her own. She told them about a man who, 9 years ago, had stopped on a dark road and pulled a stranger from a burning car and asked for nothing. Daniel Hayes never asked me for a single thing, she said. Not money, not status, not favors. He set conditions about protecting his daughter and he kept every one of them. The contract was my idea. The arrangement was my idea. He agreed because I asked him to, and he spent 3 weeks trying to teach me what family actually means, and I repaid him by letting his daughter get hurt. Victor was already shaking his head. Elena. I'm not finished, she turned to the full board. My uncle left me a condition in his will, but the real condition was never the marriage. He wanted to know if I was capable of choosing people over power. He wanted to know if after everything I had learned in this company I could still recognize the difference between what is profitable and what is right. She paused. I am withdrawing my claim to the inheritance condition. If the board determines that Victor should lead this company because I walked away from a contract marriage, then that is their decision to make. Silence. But I will not build my leadership on a child's tears. I will not keep a company by being the kind of person who passes burning cars on dark roads. The lawyer cleared his throat. He reached into his folder. He extracted a document Elena had never seen. He explained that Arthur had included a final clause known only to the lawyer, sealed until this moment. If Elena willingly and publicly chose integrity over inheritance, the clause activated. It stated that she had passed the true test of the will. It stated that no other party could challenge her claim. Victor turned a particular shade of red that Elena found instructive. The board voted. It was not close. She was in the lobby when her phone rang. She did not recognize the number but answered it anyway. I watched, Daniel said. How? Lily found it on her tablet. Someone was streaming it. A pause. She cried. Daniel. She said, Daddy, she chose us. Elena pressed her hand flat against the lobby wall to keep herself steady. I misjudged you, Daniel said. In the beginning, I thought you were like every other person who had ever come to me with money and a use for me. I was wrong. His voice was careful. I'm sorry I left the way I did. You were protecting Lily. I was scared, he said. That's the truth. I was scared because she liked you from the first day and I knew what it would do to her if you turned out to be someone who left. He was quiet for a moment. I think I was scared too because it had started to matter to me, not the contract, you. Elena did not say anything because she could not quite find the words. We're outside, Daniel said. She turned around. Daniel was standing at the entrance with Lily beside him. Lily, who was wearing her yellow dress from the wedding, which she had apparently insisted on putting on for reasons that probably made perfect sense to a 7-year-old. Lily saw Elena and ran. Elena caught her. She had never caught a running child before. It turned out a running child hits with the full weight of everything they feel, and what Elena felt in that impact was something she had no word for that was adequate. Lily pressed her face against Elena's shoulder. You stayed, she said. I stayed, Elena said. Daniel walked over slowly. He stopped in front of her. He was doing the thing she had noticed he always did when something mattered to him, which was to take his time to make sure the words were right. The first day you came to my workshop, he said, I told you I didn't need a wife. Elena looked at him. I was wrong about that. His jaw was set, his voice steady. I didn't need a contract, I didn't need money, but I do need someone who will stand beside me, someone who will love my daughter, someone who chooses us when it costs something. He looked at her the way he had that first morning she had watched him not quite close the window all the way, like something had opened that he wasn't planning to close again. Lily already chose you. I think she knew before either of us did. She's very smart, Elena said. Terrifyingly smart. A small, real smile. I'm choosing you too, not because of a will, not because of a contract, because you walked into a boardroom full of people who wanted you to fail and you told them the truth about yourself and you gave up the thing you were fighting for, and that is the only kind of person I trust. Elena looked at the man in front of her, the man who had stopped on a dark road, the man who cooked with his daughter and failed to close windows all the way and read bedtime stories in the wrong voice until a 7-year-old taught him how. The man who had looked at her in a workshop full of watching people and told her without any cruelty that a child's heart could not be bought. Yes, she said, not to a contract, not to a condition. To him. Lily looked between them both with the expression of someone who had engineered this outcome from the beginning and was very satisfied with herself. In the months that followed, the family became real in the way that real things become real, which is slowly, imperfectly, and with a great deal of burnt food. Elena ran the company and changed its culture department by department. She established a foundation in Arthur's name that supported single parents and struggling families, because she understood now what those words meant in a way she had not before. Daniel expanded his workshop into a training center for young men who needed a trade and a second chance. Lily started the school year with 2 parents who came to every event, even when Elena arrived overdressed and the other parents whispered. Lily held Elena's hand anyway, every time. On the morning that came to stand in Elena's memory as the one that felt most like home, she was attempting breakfast and losing badly. The eggs were wrong. The toast was too dark. Daniel stood at the counter pretending to read something so she wouldn't see him watching. You can tell me it's bad, Elena said. It's great, Daniel said. You are a terrible liar. I'm an excellent liar, Lily, is this great? Lily looked at her plate, looked at Elena. It's the best bad eggs I ever had, she said diplomatically, which meant she had been paying close attention to how adults navigated things. Elena laughed, a real laugh, the kind she had not used in years, the kind that started in the chest and didn't ask permission. Daniel looked at her across the kitchen and said nothing. He didn't need to. Later, while Lily was drawing at the table with her enormous collection of markers, Elena stood at the window with her coffee. Daniel came to stand beside her. Your uncle said I needed a wife, Elena said. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Outside, the morning was doing what mornings do in that particular neighborhood, which is to say it was quiet and unhurried and full of ordinary light. No, he said, he knew we all needed a home. Lily looked up from her drawing. She had been making a picture of 3 people. They all had hair. The one in the middle had the most. If you've made it to the end of this story, you already know it was worth every minute. If it touched you, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And drop in the comments, what was the moment that got you? We read every single one.